Hey everybody, it's Gary. Uncle Gary is here, and today I'm going to tell some trucking stories. Uh, rather than have some epistemological worldview crash test, which I enjoy doing that, but I also enjoy talking about life and stuff that I experienced in the trucking world. You want to talk about worldviews? Enter the trucking world. That's a worldview from another planet. It's a whole nother world. And if you guys have a child or a grandchild or somebody that wants to be a trucker, share this with them. Give them my phone number. My email is crashtestuncle@gmail.com. Email me and say, hey, I want you to talk to my uh, kid or I want to talk to you myself because there's a lot of people that are looking to get into trucking and they're spending a lot of money to go to CDL school. Not always a bad idea, but there's things that I can share with you that are just truthful. I'm not trying to be. This is an event. It's kind of funny what happened a couple of days ago. But it is Saturday afternoon, late in the afternoon now. I just woke up not long ago. I left Friday. Actually, I went to Tyler and had breakfast with my little sister, and we had a good conversation. I told her the story, and she laughed. She had some funny input. And my big sister, I talk to on the phone while I'm driving all the time. And neither one of them are blood related. I've collected family my whole life, and I think it's a good thing. If you don't have people that you can just talk about life with, doom scrolling on the internet's only going to make you more isolated and screw you up. So let's talk about funny stuff. Let's talk about painful stuff. Let's talk about life. Trucking life. Now that's a whole nother thing. This last week, I was down in South Texas delivering a load. I got that delivered. Then they send you back to another customer. I think it was in Temple or somewhere in Central Texas. It was, and I stopped and I go to the office, pick up the paperwork, go check out the trailer, and then and the problem with trucking, guys, the reality of it, you're on a clock. They're watching every move you make. You got a camera on you all the time anyway, and there's a little stress to it just because you're nitpicked. Everything you do is gonna be wrong. I mean, a lot of drivers I know they'll have to send a message and wait 30 minutes for a reply. Yes, it is okay if you unlock your door and step out of the truck and stretch your legs. Yeah, I mean, because there are some I've talked to new truckers especially, they're so afraid to make a mistake. And I've just kind of learned to roll with it and laugh about it and I like to ask uncomfortable questions of leadership. They don't like me for that, but I don't care. I'm too old and I've got too much life experience to play games. I'm honest. I'll work hard. I'll work harder than anybody half my age, and I'll get more done. But I will ask questions that they won't ask. So anyway, this kind of is part of that. But I told both my sisters, my big sister, um, about this, and she was laughing. She said, "You got to do a podcast on the dilemmas the crap that you run into out there." And I said, "Yeah, it might be fun." And my little sister she said something that just made me laugh. I'm still laughing about it, and I'm like, "Well, here we go, trucking tales." A couple days ago. Uh, I love my schedule. The one thing I can say about trucking is I prayed for this Sunday through Thursday. I wanted to be off on the weekends so I can have my Sabbath. I'm cooking. I got some food in the pressure cooker and about to enjoy a glass of wine and some good food and have the time to do a podcast. But one of the other things that I love to do is I'm an audio engineer. I love mixing sound. I've done it for churches. I've done it professionally for my own band that toured for many, many years, over 20 years. And I've been doing it almost 40 years, doing some form of audio production or something. So I'm that old guy that used to edit commercials on KLTV, that ended up on KLTV and also on KTBV radio stations around here. I used to edit it. We had a block, a grease pencil, so you would put on headsets and rock reel to reel tape, whoop whoop, to find the edit point. Then you'd take a grease pencil, then you'd cut it and tape it back together, and that's how we used to do audio editing. Now you just open up a computer and go, okay, right there, and do it. And so I'm one of those analog guys, but that helps me. Uh, I just love taking that experience, and not because I think I know everything. Actually, the longer you do something, the more you're going to realize what you don't know. And so I enjoy going and helping bands sound the best that they can. I enjoy mixing for different artists. Had the blessing of mixing for Luke Prater a few weeks ago at Brisket Love. That was a blast. It was great. And Todd Freeman and Bulletproof last night at Madame Pearl's Dance Hall and Saloon in downtown Fort Worth in the stockyards there. That's a historic old saloon, and man, you're stepping back in time when you go there. And you ever get a chance to see Todd and his band, those guys rock. Great, great fun, and had a good time. Except it's kind of a long ordeal. I get off Thursday night, I park my rig, then get up Friday morning, I go to the doctor. Then I had breakfast or brunch with my little sister Jennifer, and then I ran. And my sisters, neither one of them were blood, like I said, but they're family. I mean, we choose our family. Most of my family, my immediate family, is all gone except for my daughter, and I love her more than life itself. But you got to choose your family and choose your community, and have people that you can laugh with, like we did this weekend, or cry with. And that these are my tribe. And anyway, I drive from that breakfast in Tyler. I go all the way to Fort Worth to set up for this gig, and we load in and do sound check, and it's a pretty long night, fighting some system problems in the house system. And anyway, it was a great night, had a good time, but it was a lot of work. And then after the gig is over at almost 1 in the morning, I jump in the car and drive straight back. So I went almost 24 hours without sleep. So I slept late today. It's my Shabbat, so that's my prerogative. I enjoy what I do, though. I enjoy having a diversion from just trucking, and I love that I can mix for some people on the weekends and still, you know, make a little money doing truck. And the operant term there's a little money because it don't pay what it promises. If you've got a kid or a grandkid, or maybe you yourself, you're like, I want to drive trucks. Send me an email, please, before it's too late, eternally too late. Send me an email at crashtestuncle@gmail.com. Just send me an email and we'll talk about it. I'll meet you for coffee whenever we can, or we'll talk on the phone, and I'll give you the lowdown. This is not really a rant because there's plenty to rant about in trucking. If you know truckers, you know how hard it is. This is one of the hardest things you can do for a living. And I've never been afraid of hard work. I was raised by a man who was raised in the Depression, and that's one thing he taught us boys to do is work. And you do a good job. And I also learned to be honest. I'm kind of straightforward, and sometimes that doesn't go real well if you're too truthful. So I'm learning. I'm developing a new strategy for truthfulness. I'm trying to do it in the form of questions rather than saying, you guys are full of crap. That doesn't go over well, ever. But I've been in positions of leadership over employees, the culture of a company, and I'm going to tell you, it's easy to criticize the people on top. And so, in the company that I'm in is so large, you really have no access to the people on top. And I've told people, I said, you have the CEO give me a call, and I'd love to sit down and have a chat with him because I'm not going to be stupid and insane. I'm just going to tell him the truth, and maybe we can help the culture of this company. But the bigger, if you work for a venture capital firm, I'm going to go into this at some future time because I think I see some things happening in the world of trucking with there's so much change coming. I don't recommend getting into it at this point unless you're my age or older and you're like, I just want to drive until I just don't want to drive anymore. And then I'll, give them the keys because by then they're going to have automated trucks doing everything, at least in the big lanes. So, there'll always be truck drivers in rural areas, and there's always going to be some jobs like that, but it's going to shift pretty radically. But now for the funny stuff, trucking tales. 2 days ago, I'm down in South Texas. I drop a load at a Amazon down there and then drive back to pick up something in Temple, Texas. And I'm loading up that trailer and I get the paperwork, and we do what we call a loaded call. It's on our application that controls everything from our pay to if we don't put it in here, we don't get paid. And so anyway, I'm just doing all the paperwork, and I'm looking at the bill of lading, and I just put the numbers on the top page and the count and the weight and put it in, and it accepts it the way it is because I'm looking. I don't really see a master BOL that they've got their numbers don't add up, and I'll tell you one thing that you'll learn about trucking. You don't get paid for a lot of stuff that you're going to be required to do. And I'm kind of old school that way. It's like, no, I'm worth something. So I'm not going to do your job for you for free. And I know a lot of drivers that just, man, I'm just scared to say anything. I'm just going to do it. No, I'm not scared to say anything. I mean, I've been fired before. I mean, I most of my life I was the boss. I owned the company, or I was the shareholder of the company and the CEO of the company. And so, and I actually fired myself one time. I don't want to go into that because it's painful, but telling you, it's crazy because when I worked for myself, I always look back, and it's easy to be criticized for what you did or didn't do, but I always tried to be fair with people. But I was also pretty firm too. And so some people love that, and some people hated me for that. And I've learned that not everybody's going to love you, and that's okay too. Uh, but I'm always going to try to be honest. Now, the funny part of trucking is that they micromanage the snot out of you. Every mile you drive, there's a camera looking at you. I reached down and grabbed my Yeti to take a drink of water while I'm driving, and the little camera that's right there, it turns red and it goes, distracted driving, and that's literally what the voice sounds like. It's a female voice, and it's not a pleasant one. And I talked to them about the programming of that, and they need to change that. At least give her an English accent. Well, you seem to be a bit distracted, sir. Could you please look at the road better? I would like that, but they're not really listening to me. My feedback is not really appreciated, I don't think. But they always ask for it, so I always tell them. And lately, they just don't talk to me. But that's okay. Uh, I work a schedule. I get sort of paid for my time, not all of it, but enough of it to at least pay the property taxes and insurance and which is about as much as a house payment used to be. So, yeah, you're just fighting to survive, and it's tough in the corporate world. Do you want to be a driver? Let's talk. But a couple of days ago, I go from San Antonio to Temple, and I'm doing this math and it's not really adding up. And I ain't got time to sit there and go through 25, 30 pages of of lists of items and their weight individually and add them all up. I don't get paid for that. The customer, in this case, I believe it was the customer because the company never communicates and tells you what the real problem was after you've fought it and it's cost you hours of your time trying to deal with somebody else's screw up, and it always falls on the driver. But the company screwed up on this, I'm sure. Uh, the customer, but anyway, I'm sitting there about to. We have to do a pre-pass on our application, to get allowed onto the rail that I had gone to because we're putting the container on the railroad to go somewhere. And I'm sitting there and I get this red message, this container has not been billed and cannot be ingated. And I'm like, oh Lord, what am I going to do? So I just park on the side of a 3-lane highway. It's not a highway, it's an entrance way into the rail. And there's also car haulers that come in with and get cars off the train and go across the country with those to deliver them. And so I'm sitting there in the far right of that active railway road with my flashers on and go, okay, let me see what I can do. I send a message. We're supposed to send a message. And our poor dispatchers, they're good. I'm not going to badmouth the people that are crushed under the weight of, micromanagement and understaffing. And so they're doing the best that they can. They're crushing it, trying to fix the problem. And then one of them asked me, he says, "Well, what's your weight and count?" And I said, "Well, I put that in on the loaded call, and it accepted it." And they said, "No, well, but no, those numbers aren't right." And I said, "Well, nobody told me. I just looked at the page they give me like I always do, and I don't get paid to think. I'm a driver. Yeah, and that's how they treat you like you're kind of dumb, and so I just play dumb." Anyway, I said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "I've got 25 pages." When he said, "Well, why don't you just take a picture of those pages and send them to me?" I said, "Well, I don't have the memory on my little steam-powered Android phone to do that. And y'all don't provide a phone. So, talk to the customer." I don't know. They had to reach out to the customer. And nobody communicated to me what was going on. They said, well, they're going to get it billed, but they just, we went back and forth on numbers. I actually went through, added up all these numbers that did not add up to the totals. Then I found packing slips in the back, and I figured out that the weight of the load, this is in the weeds for y'all, but if you want to be a trucker, it'll help you. It's like 43,000 pounds, which is about as heavy as you want to haul, because you're rolling it almost right around 80,000 pounds or close to it, and that's the max in Texas, unless you have an overweight permit. And anyway, uh, I added that up and I had well, here's the count. So I sent them those numbers. I said, well, here's the count, and I'm waiting. It was almost 2.5 hours of my time, and this is my day to go home. And I'm like, I love one thing I love about my company. With all, it sounds like I'm venting because there's a lot of bad to go with the good. It's kind of like life, really. And I love my home time. They always try to get us home. And so I'm like, guys, I need to get home. I'm just sitting here for hours. I can't even ingate this load. And finally, one of the managers just said, well, just drop it at the Dallas yard in Dallas and bobtail home. And they were helping, trying to help me out. And I understand because they can't control any much more than I can as dispatchers. And you're going to hear a lot of truckers just argue about dispatchers. They're evil. They've got this sinister plan to give me the bad loads and other drivers get the good loads. Well, I've got good loads and I've got some sucky loads, and I'll let them know. So, why am I wasting my all my hours of a day on these crosstown rush hour traffic moves that get me 40 something miles? I mean, I don't make any money. And anyway, I could do a whole podcast on ways you don't get paid as a trucker, and that might be a good one. If y'all are interested in this, I'm just kind of throwing this out there because some of you might be facing similar situations where you work, or you may want to be a trucker, which I would say, don't do it. Don't do it. I love it, but it's not for the faint of heart. It's hard work. But I'll work harder than somebody half my age. And I've never been afraid of hard work. But but some of the stuff that's really frustrating can turn into a funny story. Like a couple of days ago, I'm sitting there and I've had this 2.5. It's crazy. And finally, they're like, "Well, just take it to this yard." And I'm like, "Okay, I'd like to do that." I'm sitting at the inlet road to the rail, and there's nowhere I can go to turn around. Uh, is it okay for me to do a U-turn here? And they kind of frown on that. Actually, they'll fire you for that, or they'll try to. My first week working, I was a bobtail. I didn't even have a trailer, and I had to do a U-turn because the company sent me to the wrong address, and I pulled off and just kind of turned around on this road. And boy, they've got me in there. We have you on film doing this horrible, egregious thing, and I'm sitting there going, "What? Who are you talking?" And I see myself on video looking both ways, turning and doing a U-turn. And she said, "Now, why did you do that?" I said, "Because I y'all sent me the wrong address, and I had to go back the other way." That's against our procedures. And my exact answer was, well, honey, I didn't say honey because that'll get you in this culture. It makes you a predator. You're an evil, toxic male. So don't do that. Trucking's full of those. Anyway, I uh, I said, look, it would have been helpful that if during training someone had mentioned that you have a policy of no U-turns, that would have been really cool. Can you show me something that I signed that delineates that in writing? And of course, they dropped it and just never said anything else about it because yeah, asking the right question will help you in the trucking world. But it really doesn't change anything because it's what I call technocratic determinism. You've got a little app that basically guides you and pushes you in a direction that you don't even really see the numbers below it. I actually gave some feedback to my company. I said, if I could hire Elon Musk to audit your app and the algorithms behind it, I might understand how I get paid and how I don't get paid. It'd be nice to know because there's no transparency. And that's kind of how trucking is. And the thing I told my manager during an evaluation, this may be why some people don't like me, but I'm just going to be honest. I'm not trying to be uh, overly critical, but I just said, well, I kind of like this company because I said, now every trucking company I've ever worked for, they're all liars. They lie through their teeth. And but y'all are the most skilled liars I've ever met in my life. And so I'd rather deal with an enemy that I know than the one I don't know. So I know what y'all's lies are, and I'm just kind of resigned to, you know, that I'm under that kind of culture. And they don't like that kind of honesty, but I don't care. I was raised that way. You just kind of you tell the truth. You don't have to be a jerk about it, but you can be truthful. And some people, if you're truthful, they think you're being a jerk, and you just can't fix that in a culture that like, well, you kind of offended me. You just broke my little heart. Well, bless your heart. Let me tell you some more stuff you don't want to hear. That's what this podcast is about, anyway. Uh, but the funny thing was, I'm talking to one of the lady managers called, and she goes, "Okay, well, Gary, you can't." Do a U-turn because it's against policy. You know that. I said, oh yeah, I kind of we talked about that, and that's why I'm asking you. I said, I can't follow y'all's directions. You told me to go to this place. I can't go there without in-gating a container that cannot be in-gated. So how do I fix that? And she's like, well, I've got you up on Google Maps, and I see your GPS coordinates. You're right there in the parking lot. And I thought, well, I am. Am I? Really? So I'm looking out the window and what it's kind of funny, what they see on a Google map and what I see out the windshield of my truck, two different things. And and I said, I I see a parking lot, but what do you want me to do about that parking lot that's over to my right? On the left, there's a main highway that I came in on. And on the right side, there's a train and there's a parking lot. And I'm like, wait. She said, well, you can just go in that parking lot and turn around. Okay. No. I said, there's a 12-foot berm, a grassy knoll of sorts that I would have to take this 70-foot, 80,000 pound rig over, go off road and put in the transaxle locks and go over the berm. And then I've got to cross two railroad tracks with no railroad crossings in those locations. And there's a train on it, so I'd have to break through the train or somehow jump the train in that rig. And then I could land in a parking lot full of cars. And there's not enough room to. Anyway, I don't think I could do that. Can you help me? Can you please? And I've learned when I ask them, just please advise. Please advise. And A lot of times you get no response because they don't have any advice because they don't know. They don't know what they don't know what you're going through as a driver. And so I'm just sitting there going, okay, you've asked me to do something. And as a good little trucker boy, I want to do it. I want to make you happy. I want to be a good trucker. Trucker can't move unless trucker turn around. I can do a U-turn. I can do it, but I'm not allowed to, so I shall not because I'm a good trucker. And I said, the only thing I can do is engate this that will not be allowed to be engated. And then I'm trapped in a portal trying to get into the rail. And she said, well, just walk over to the driver assist building, which is about a mile away, and I'd have to go through the gate. So if I drove to the near there, I'm stuck, I'm clogging up the whole traffic lane. And I'm like, so you want me to ingate the container that can't be ingated? And oh, okay. And we talked for a while, and finally she's like, well, yeah, you're just gonna have to do something. Well, yeah, that's what I'm trying to avoid doing the wrong thing because anything I do is gonna be held against me. I'm a driver, which means we're the lowest on the totem pole. Anyway, I just finally said, all right, thanks for your help. And I drove through the portal up to the gate. It reads all the numbers and everything on your load, and you go up and it flags it, but all this it had flagged it on the app. But when I get to the gate, I push the button to talk to the clerk, and the passive aggressive clerk that's normally there did not answer. Nobody did actually. They usually don't. That's another thing that our dispatchers, they don't really know what it's like to be a driver when you're trying to do something and you don't have the tools, you don't really have uh, the responsiveness from people on the rail or from dispatch because they're understaffed and everybody's just busy and you just learn to just kind of handle it on your own. That's what gets drivers in trouble. But I'm sitting there trying not to be a bad driver. I'm trying to be a good little driver, and I'm putting all the information in it, and all of a sudden I'm just sitting there going, "Oh boy, it's going. I'm stuck." The gate opens, and all of a sudden the buck slip comes out and says, "Okay, park it in lot B, slot da 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 whatever." It told me where to park it. And I went, "Oh, maybe they built it. Maybe a miracle happened." And all of a sudden the planets aligned. Mars is in retrograde, and it just lined up for me, and the gate opened. Hallelujah! I drove on in. And and parked it. And after all that, they couldn't get me a load, so I just bobtailed home. What was funny, I was talking to my big sister about it. She was laughing, and she was just like, "You got to do a podcast on this." And when I'm talking to my little sister at brunch yesterday, she- she's uh, the thing she said that just blew me away. She goes, and in just the middle of my story, she stops and goes, the berm, not the berm. And I'm still laughing about that because that's kind of how you feel. You're like, what am I going to do? The berm, not the berm. And so, uh, trucking stories are fun. I like telling stories. I come from a family of storytellers. My grandfather was a songwriter. I never met him, and he was a storyteller. And I found out a lot of my ancient past kin were storytellers, but they were also called liars. And I can neither confirm nor deny any allegations to that effect. I'm just saying I like to share stories. I'm trying to be truthful, folks. This really did happen. I did not drive over the berm because not the berm. We're not going to do the berm. And but you'll find yourself in situations like this. No, it doesn't matter what you do for a living. Doesn't matter what company you work for, you're going to run into situations. And my only anecdote, after much frustration, and you can get angry and you can just go those evil "Rah," and be mad at everybody who's above you in the pecking order, or you can just go, let me ask this question and see what they do. And it's a fun exercise to kind of see how they answer questions that they really can't answer. Or they'll tell you to do something that's a great idea if it were humanly possible. And then you have to explain to them, well, that's not humanly possible. And then watch them squirm. I don't squirm anymore. I just go, okay, it's going to cost me some time, but Might as well have a podcast episode to talk about after all that's done. But anyway, guys, I want you to know that if you have any interest in the trucking industry, I can give you some honest feedback. I've talked to new drivers, and it is really it's sad, and it concerns me when I see people that they're just completely confused because they're not given the information. They're told a bunch of platitudes, and corporations do this. And I think we'll talk more about this and how hard it is on people in the workplace because you're getting ground to powder out there. We're getting ground to powder. And and I've always been a person that if something's not right, I'm going to address it. And I've seen this happen. I worked for a corporation that was owned by a family, and I have my coffee cup here, and but it's not here. I've already drank it. I had to wake up. Um, but I've worked for corporations that were bought out by venture capital firms, and those people can squeeze a nickel till the buffalo farts. That they're so money, bottom line, everything. They don't care about the employees. You're going to do what they say. You're going to do it the way they say, even if they don't know what they're talking about. You're going to do what they say. And there's no empathy. And I'm noticing in the tools they give us, which are online, their applications, we're no longer in a position where you can interact with humans on a lot on a level face to face. There's that's going away. In the future, I don't want to be a doomsdayer, but I see some darkness in the future if companies don't change their culture. I'm big on culture. I've been a CEO. I've run employees. I've fired myself once, and I've fired other people. I don't like doing that, but I'm telling you, face to face is going away, and everything's an algorithm. And if it's programmed correctly, you're okay. But if it's not, you're getting robbed, you're getting stolen from, and you're not being valued. And that's a hard thing. So if you want to be a truck driver, and you think you want to drive for 4 or 5 more years, and you're tough, you can take it. You can do it. But if not, if you're looking for a long-term career, learn how to program automatic trucks that are going to drive themselves and kill people without a human being there to blame. Uh, oh, it's just a happy story, but learn to laugh at these things, not the death and mayhem that's going to come from the technocracy where we're headed down, but the funny interactions in whatever job you get, you'll just notice that management doesn't always know what they're talking about, and you can't really say that, but you can ask questions and maybe they can figure that out. Love you guys. Y'all have a good one. Bye.